System fit for purpose. That's tonight's Granada debate. In April, the government is cutting a key benefit called Employment Support Allowance for ill or disabled people. The idea behind it is to give them an incentive to work. The ESA will be cut from £102 a week to £73, the same as job seekers' allowance. Claimants have been forced to take a controversial medical, a work capability assessment. Tribunals, though, show that almost 2/3 of people who had their benefits cut were unfit for work. Later we'll be hearing from the director Ken Loach, whose latest film, I, Daniel Blake, shows the harsh reality of applying for benefits. But first, this report from our correspondent Elaine Wilcox.
This was like his life's work. I mean, he put everything into this centre. You know, he wasn't work shy, he wasn't a slacker, and to think that, you know, in the end he ended up begging for the support that he needed and that he never received.
James Harrison had managed a community centre for 35 years and was made redundant. His daughter, who's studying for a science doctorate, says her father's health deteriorated as he applied for benefits. After his death, she found a note he'd typed for job centre staff describing how his health was suffering.
He often didn't have money to feed himself. He was drove to food banks. I think he went to a food bank, or he received a food bank token 2 weeks before he passed away.
Her father had a number of health issues, including a lung condition and depression, but was past fit for work, something his doctor didn't support. But his daughter discovered job centre staff had written to his GP, telling them to stop issuing her father with sick notes.
So if he didn't submit sick notes, if he didn't provide evidence as to why he couldn't attend or why he couldn't do certain jobs that they'd ask him to do, you know, he wouldn't have any payment from them. It's just so shocking to me that he was being asked to pay £50 for his medical records, which he desperately needed, and he just didn't have it, you know, because he only had 70 a week. So.
Like many claimants, Mr Harrison's appeal tribunal was held without him, and he was again deemed fit to work.
He felt ashamed, and I think there wasn't just one factor that contributed to that. The DWP, the job centre staff, the contact centre staff, even the assessor who carried out the assessment all contributed to this. You know, him feeling this shame, and that he, you know, it wasn't an entitlement. It was something, you know, he was clawing for, he was begging for.
The sad thing is that it's not there as a safety net for everyone now.
For GPs, this is a familiar story. Tribunals show half of people past fit in medical assessments were actually ill, and the decisions were wrong.
When people go for medical assessments, they don't always see a doctor or even someone who is clinically trained. They may see someone who is administratively trained. And these people are not going to pick up the subtleties of mental illness, and even the doctors are constrained by the forms they have to follow.
Do you think your dad would still be alive today without this process?
Yeah, I witnessed him deteriorate. He would just become a shadow of himself, and it was just so, you know, degrading. It really was.
James Harrison died in November of emphysema and heart disease, still waiting for a second medical assessment.
The fact that they deemed that he had no impairment to work, you know, several months before he was, you know, died, is astounding. You know, imagine if he had have been forced into a job and he died sort of, you know, at the wheel of a truck, or if he had died in a factory, you know, it would put people's health at risk.
His daughter said this was the only time her father asked for help, and his story could be anyone's.
We asked the Secretary of State, Damien Green, or one of his ministers, to be interviewed, but we were told no one was available to address some of the issues we've raised. Abby Harrison says her dad was forced to look for a job even though he was ill. She wants an independent review of his case. The DWP say it's normal procedure for GPs to be notified after an assessment so that GPs know that sick notes are no longer needed. Their statement goes on. We constantly review our processes and procedures and have made significant improvements to the work capability assessment since it was first introduced in 2008, particularly for people with mental health problems. Well, earlier I spoke to two North West MPs about the issues raised in that report. Graham Evans, the Conservative MP for Weaver Vale, is a former member of the Work and Pensions Select Committee. And Labour MP Jim McMahon, who represents Oldham West and Royton, is a shadow minister for local government and devolution. I asked Graham Evans if he thought the benefits system was fair and fit for purpose.
Well, the benefit system is fit for purpose. It has to be fair to those people who are in receipt of benefits, but it also has to be fair to the people who pay for it, the hard-working taxpayers.
We saw a very tragic case there, Jim McMahon. Is this typical, James Harrison, of cases coming to you?
Well, I think the story of James could be repeated hundreds or thousands of times over, unfortunately. I see it at my advice sessions where people are at the end of their tether. They've been treated in quite an inhumane way. They often are very proud. They didn't want to be part of the benefit system, but life circumstances happen, and there, but for the grace of God, go us. At some point, we might find ourselves in that position where, we fall on hard times and have to go for help. And I would hope that the system at that point is at the point where you're treated like a human being, where you're treated like you're not trying to manipulate the system, claim something you're not entitled to, because a vast majority of people who go there don't want to be there, but they have to because of life circumstance, and they should be treated in a fair way.
Graham, in terms of pound notes, from April, new claimants are going to get less money, and they're sick people.
Well, what the government is trying to do on ESA is just get it on par with job seekers allowance. 1 in 5 people on job seekers allowance are enabled and helped to get into work, whereas it's only 1 out of 100 on ESA. So the system does need to be changed.
It's £30 less than they would be getting on ESA.
No, but it's new claimants, not existing claimants from April. But the message is that the government wants to help people. The long-term unemployed into work. We believe that work is the best.
How do you help them if they're paid less money?
Well, the work groups are designed to help people to get into work because they will be better off in work. The changes that the government have done in terms of taxation, so you can keep more money that you earn rather than paying tax. So it does pay to work. And of course, a lot of these people have been out of work for many, many years, and that's why the work-related assessment groups is helping these people to get into work. But as it stands now, only 1 in 100 are getting into work, and that needs to change.
Jim McMahon, what's not to like if this new system will incentivise people to get back into the workplace where they do better? Because
the people we're talking about have long-term health conditions. There's a reason why they're not in work. And by the way, a lot of these people have worked all their lives. They've got to a stage where, because of the health conditions, they're not able to work through no fault of their own. And the system should not be sending people into poverty. It shouldn't be making people more depressed and ill than they already are. It should be there to help people. And the truth is, for people in that circumstance, they need more support, more targeted personal support than the system currently offers.
And that's what the system is doing. It is targeting directly to individuals.
It's targeting
on a case
people, that's absolutely true, but it's not a fair
case
system.
By case basis. In my constituency, I have 2 Job Centre Pluses. I pay tribute to the staff there, the work coaches that take on people with very, very difficult challenges to get them into work. And I pay tribute to those people in Job Centre Plus because they do whatever they can to help people into work. We believe that work is the best way to help people with health conditions, mental health conditions. Work should always pay, but I do think it's the best thing.
But there's a world of difference between making work pay. So when people go out to work, they can earn a decent standard of living because of the wages that they earn. And by the way, there's many millions of people that aren't in that situation who do work very hard, versus people who can't work through no fault of their own, not being sent into a cycle of poverty and illness because of the system. And I should say, you pay tribute to people who work in the job centres, and I do, including my family members who work there. They came into public service because they wanted to be good public servants, and they are absolutely depressed with the way the government are forcing them to treat people in an inhumane way.
I have 2 Job Centre Pluses. They are motivated. One of the policies that the government has introduced is universal credit. That helps job centre staff to enable people who were dependent on benefits. The benefit culture enables them to work, earn more money and not lose their benefits. So it's the combination of the government's welfare reforms that are helping more and more people into work. And in terms of disability, since 2013, over 500,000 disabled people have got jobs. So it's not true to say that everybody.
But there have been
is
cuts
penalised.
to benefits, and wasn't it put as a way of making savings on the back of people?
No, we spent 50 billion on benefits, which is more than France and Germany. We're reinvesting that money to help the people that Jim's talking about, to help them get into work.
No, I'm sorry, this is about choices.
It's not cuts, they are not cuts.
The £2,100 that's being taken away from people on benefits who are ill is being given in tax incentives and tax cuts to high earners, £3,000 a year. That's where the money's going. It's about choices.
Are you not targeting the poor?
No, well, we have, as I said earlier, we have cut taxes for the lowest paid workers. We've introduced the living wage, and we've taken 24 million people out of taxation altogether, so it does pay to work. But what we're talking about here is universal credit and other reforms that enable people to get off benefits a lifelong. It's only the Labour Party that thinks spending more on benefits and keeping people on benefits. We, as Conservatives, believe that work always pays, and we think work is the best way to help with health conditions such as mental issues.
Damien Green, the DWP Secretary, has told us that more and more disabled people are getting into work, so it's taking time, but perhaps the policy is having an effect.
500,000 since 2013.
Yeah.
But disability covers a range of different ailments and physical limitations, mental illness, etc. Quite a number of the people who are being affected by the changes that are being put through are people with very serious conditions, where they're in receipt of hospital care, where the GPs themselves say they should not be working, and where Department for Work and Pensions are telling GPs even to stop issuing sick notes for people who need it. That's the system we've got, and the most telling thing in all of that contribution was the term a benefits culture. There is a view, a very narrow view, that people who are claiming benefits are entitled to them, and that's fundamentally wrong. If you believe in a safety net and a fair society, it should be there to catch people.
Well, we both believe in a fair society. We believe it's fair for the people who are on benefits, but also fair for the people who have to pay for it. And there are many families, hard-working families, who are just about managing paying their taxes. So we have to remember who actually pays for it, and it's hard-working taxpayers. But I do believe that in terms of health and well-being, having a job is the best way.
I absolutely resent the narrative, which is blame your neighbour. That's completely what you're doing. You're saying if your circumstances aren't well enough, the reason for that is because you're paying too much tax and it's to pay for your next door neighbour over there that's undeserving. That's what you're saying.
I'll pause you there for a second, gentlemen, because this issue, the benefits story, was a very powerful part of the film I, Daniel Blake by the director Ken Loach. He focused on one particular case study, and the man spirals into despair and poverty. Our correspondent Elaine Wilcox asked the director why he picked this topic for his film.
We went across the country, met many people, always the same story, and yet it's a story that wasn't being told.
Your only option is job seekers allowance.
Well, I want to appeal.
You have to apply online, sir.
There are many stories like Daniel Blake's and many people in his situation. I mean, just a few days ago, there was a story of a man who was declared fit for work and collapsed in the pavement outside shortly afterwards and died.
I've been told by my doctor that I'm not supposed to go back to work yet.
I'm afraid you must continue to look for work, or your benefit payments will be frozen.
Your film shows Daniel navigating a system that seems to be so difficult, only the very desperate continue to apply. The government says the assessments are rigorous, but they are fair.
They're clearly wrong. It's not rigorous, it's cruel, and case after case shows it.
This is James Harrison's story. It's very similar to those stories in your film, but this is real life.
He felt ashamed when he needed the help. There was nobody there for him.
Well, it's disgusting. Vulnerable people should be properly treated with dignity.
Now, Damien Green, the Benefits Minister, says not all job centre staff, as you portray, are faceless bureaucrats. And this is a popular policy. People want to see more people off benefits and doing work.
The average person thinks that a third of benefits are claimed illegally. Do you know what the real figure is? The real figure is 0.7. 0.7 wrongly claimed. 10 times more benefits are not claimed that should be claimed. And if you think of the tax cheats, well, that's off the scale.
You've won a Palme d'Or and critical acclaim. Some had hoped your film would be a movement for change, but the decision makers, ministers, they're not watching your film, are they?
We were asked if we wanted Theresa May and Green to watch it. No, they know what they're doing. I think the phrase is conscious cruelty. I mean, the government knows exactly what they're doing. It should make us all angry.
Is there a sense of frustration for you when you hear the stories that we featured, that people are still suffering?
I would say to those people who are being conned by the right-wing press, the Trump-like press, and by the vicious TV programmes, most of them, you're one step away from being Daniel Blake. You're one pay packet away and you'll be in trouble. So think carefully on which side you're on.
Graham Evans, the director there, said very powerfully, we're only ever one pay packet away from being in that position. Do you see that?
No, I don't agree with Ken Loach. I've not seen his film. I've seen the clips and I've seen the individual, the character in there. And Job Centre Pluses that were depicted in that film, I do not accept that at all. I have two in my constituency, in Runcorn and Northwich. They are outstanding. They are welcoming places. Now, the individual in Ken Loach's film may have needed retraining. If you come into Job Centre Pluses in my constituency, they will go to the ends of the earth to try and help you back into work.
Because what comes over is that they're saying go online, and he's not used to computer and digital age.
Well, he is a gentleman of a certain age. When I left school, we didn't have computers. I had to learn that in my 20s and 30s and look at the technology that our children teach us now. So it isn't easy for people perhaps in their 50s. And unfortunately, in the 21st century, if you want a job, you're inevitably going to be working with computers. So it can be difficult for some job seekers. But as I say, Job Centre Plus are very good with work coaches in giving people those skills to get the next job.
How long did it take you to learn to use the computer?
Over many years, as I say. I left school.
So if you're in urgent need of benefits and the system forces you to learn the computer within an hour, is that a fair system?
Well, looking at the scene in that film, it's not good. There is help within the job centres to claim for benefits other than online, but the mantra is digital by default, because that is the modern 21st century world that we live in.
Is the concern, Jim, for people that it's a big unwieldy system that they just can't get hold of quickly when they need money quickly?
It's an unfair system. It doesn't take into account the other things that happen around that individual. So, for instance, in the way that the benefit system lets people down, they've also got the gas and electricity to pay, they've got the rent to pay, they've got bailiffs coming to the door, they've got children to send to school and to clothe and to feed.
The whole population has gas and electricity pay, and this is the thing, is trying to help people take control of their own lives. That's why we're keen to get them into work. And if you're constantly looking at taxpayers to pay through benefits, they have to take control of their lives like everybody else.
So benefits. Essentially, you accept that the system isn't fair, but what you're saying is it's tough because other people are paying taxes to pay for it.
What I'm saying is that we all have to, every taxpayer has to take control of their lives, their household income, and what the government is trying to do is help people in long-term unemployed to skill up, to help them get that job.
How does it help people to refuse them the benefits they're legitimately entitled to, only on appeal, where over 60% of them are successful in overturning that decision?
Well, if you're looking at individual cases, there's always individual cases, Jim, you can point to. But
I'm talking about the total. Over 60% of people who appeal the decision are successful in overturning that decision.
Because that's the thing about the tribunals, they go and they face it, and there are a lot of reversals. That's not good. That's a system that's not working very well.
I've not come on here to say it's all perfect. There's an awful lot of people being seen through the system isn't broken, but there's a lot of people with chaotic lifestyles come in, and yes, it's right that they are helped by the state, but the overall mantra, what the government's trying to do, is to help those people, help them get the skills that they need and into work and into a job.
Is it an implication that I don't understand, why does it help them if they're paid less or put through a system they found very frightening?
Well, under ESA you are currently paid more, and that will stay the same, but after April it'll be the same amount of money for job seekers allowance, and those on job seekers allowance, 1 in 5 go into work, where it's 1 in 100 currently on ESA. So that's why we're changing that, to help people on ESA. And even if you do have a condition, there's nothing to stop you trying out work, and with universal credit the government has put that in place to help people go from benefits and into work, and I believe that is the right long-term solution for people on benefits.
The Tories in control and previously at the coalition, they had get to grips with a spiralling out of control benefit system. The claim was it was becoming a dependency for some people and that new schemes are required to help them move on.
I think everybody would accept that a fair system of welfare supports people to get into work, not just any job for the sake of it, and that's, by the way, all the system cares about. The system doesn't care that you're in decent, well-paid, secure work. What they care about is that you're not claiming benefits. That's the real system that we've got today. And what we need to do is support people who are already in work to upskill, to get better paid jobs, more secure jobs, so they're less likely to present as unemployed in the future. That's the way we should be doing it, but the system is not that. It's basically a sanctioning warehouse. It's sending people through a machine. It's treating them in a completely unfair way.
What, to make them feel bad?
To basically to restrict entitlement. This is not about having an entitlement that people can get if they need that support. It's about saying to people, the assumption is you are not entitled to it, and the whole system and the assessment of the system is paid to do that. And the stories that we hear, and you must hear it in your own advice sessions, where people are treated in a terrible way at the point in their life when they can least afford to be treated like that.
I think the word used in the report we saw at the beginning of the programme was that people feel degraded by it, having to go through this kind of questioning and the belief that they shouldn't be there.
Because working class people, the majority of people who were mistreated by the system, have a pride in work. They've worked all their lives. They've strove to provide for the family. But circumstances happen: illness, divorce, family crisis can send people into that system. And when you have that pride instilled in you, and you're forced to claim to make you feel so dehuman in the way that it does, it's completely unfair.
What's the biggest thing wrong with the system in your view, Jim?
Well, it's not tailored as far as I can see. So, at the moment, it's about the total cost of the system is driving a lot of the decisions that are made, not what's the best outcome for people who are being affected by the system.
I agree with a lot of Jim says that people do work hard and end up, for one reason or another, in poor circumstances where they have to go to the job centre and they're on benefits. But the challenge is to help them get back onto their own feet and into work. But we spend £50 billion on benefits. It's more than France and Germany. It's 2.5% of our GDP. We spend more on benefits. So I don't think it's just about spending the money. But as regards to cuts, we're not cutting. We're reinvesting in systems to help long-term unemployed into work. And in the 21st century, they do have to be digitally aware. They do have to be able to operate computers if they're going to get a good, well-paid job. And Jim's absolutely right. Skills is a real issue, because if you speak to employers, as I do in my constituency, they need skilled people, and we're importing skilled people from abroad. So I hope Jim and I can agree that it is about skills, the skills agenda of getting these people into the skills that employers
we need to be a bit careful here. But by the sound of this discussion, you would believe that people have been denied their benefit because they can't use a computer. We're talking about people who are recovering from cancer, people with lung disease, people with serious physical disabilities who cannot work and need far more support in that point in their life, and they don't get it.
Well, no, that's you've changed the subject there. But people who are recovering from cancer, or indeed with cancer, in my experience, still want to go to work. It's not about cutting.
You've heard the story of James Harrison from Liverpool and the impact it has on him.
But he didn't have cancer, but the people I know who have cancer wanted to work for as long as they possibly could.
We're drawing to a close. Thank you for taking part in this debate. Well, it's certainly a topic that's very emotive and no doubt one we'll return to in future. But if there's an issue affecting you you'd like us to investigate and debate, please get in touch. Tweet @Granada_debate. That's it for tonight. We're back